Let me ask you something. Have you ever felt like your career was running you instead of the other way around? You're giving 200% to everything. But deep down, you know you want something more, something different. That's exactly what my guest today experienced. I'm speaking with Amanda Schwartz Ramirez, and she was an executive in PayPal and worked in a high pressure leadership role at a hyper growth startup. She was working 80-hour weeks while pregnant with her third child. Obviously, that was unsustainable. And she decided that instead of stepping back, she stepped forward into the world of consulting. She said to me in this episode, I didn't want to slow down, but I needed the model to change. So today, she's the founder of Garden Labs, and she helps companies refine their strategies and scale intentionally, all while balancing her role as a mom. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to From a Woman to a Leader, a podcast dedicated to discussing women's unique challenges in the tech industry. I'm your host, Limor Bergman-Gross, and for those who don't know me, I've been in tech. My entire career started as a software engineer and grew into leadership positions in tech. And similarly to Amanda, I also struggle to balance the high demand of working in tech with raising a family. I have 4 children. And similarly to Amanda, I very resonate with her because I felt that something is wrong. I felt that, something needed to change for me, and that's where I stepped into coaching. And, in the episode today, I want to help you. I want to help you to open your mind to possibilities. It doesn't have to be consulting, but I want to show you that there are more possibilities than you may think about right now. And in this episode, Amanda opens up about how she deconstructed her corporate roles to uncover her expertise, how she landed her first consulting clients, and how she built her career on her own terms. And she said it best. Don't get stuck in your title. Think about the impact you have made and how that can work for you. And I want to help you do the same. Not to be too stuck about what you're doing today and what's your title, rather to think about your possibilities, what skills you gained, what you can do, and open your mind to possibilities. And if you're ready to explore what's possible for your career, join us for this episode. Amanda's story might be the spark that you need in order to take that next step. Are you ready? Let's dive right in. Hi, Amanda. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm wonderful. It's such a pleasure having you here today, and I'm super excited for our conversation.
I am too.
Yeah, we have a lot of good topics to talk about, but maybe we'll share a little bit to our audience, your background, your corporate background, so they get to know you a little bit.
Sure, I'm happy to. So I actually started my career in the music industry, and then I went into tech. So I've done a number of hard pivots in my life. The journey into tech was out of just curiosity and really getting excited about what I was seeing when I was in business school. And then I ended up spending a decade at PayPal in a number of different kind of strategy and operations capacities, building different business units, pulling partnerships together, and running some different strategic initiatives. Then I went into a high growth, hyper growth startup and led a variety of corporate functions before starting my own business called Garden Labs, which happened about 2.5 years ago, where I do strategy and ops consulting for tech companies.
Incredible and very inspiring. And actually, a question that popped into my head. So you mentioned you came from the music industry to tech. It sounds like, okay, it's not even related.
Yeah.
How did you make that kind of, transition?
Yeah, it didn't sound that way either to me. So when I was in the music industry, I loved music. I still do. But
Yeah.
what I really loved was being like the backstage support for the creative geniuses. It was really, how can I help you achieve your vision and your dreams? And that was my role in the music space. And so when I think about what I've been doing in tech for the last 15 years, it's been literally exactly that. I pair really well with technologists who have expertise and, like, off the charts, brilliance in different ways, but I complement them with more of a kind of strategy and ops perspective. And I'm still backstage doing my thing, but it really is in service of a vision that somebody else frankly has. And it still, it fires me up every day.
That's incredible, and sounds like you found kind of your strength and your core value, and that can be implemented in multiple fields.
That's exactly right.
And this
That's
is
exactly
exactly like the message we want to give our listeners today, right? Because
right.
so many women get stuck with what they have done so far and
Yes,
not with what they have and how can they apply those skills.
that's exactly right. You can, it's so easy to kind of see yourself just in one context and to have a hard time zooming out and going, okay, where else can I take this? What else can I be doing? And I like to, when I think back on just the chapters of my career that I've had so far, and I'm really excited for the future chapters, I think about how when I've been able to kind of open different career pathways for myself, that I had no idea where it was going, but I was just frankly bringing the same skills into a new context and just seeing what happened. And that's been a lot of, what sounds like this career arc that's clean. It's just been a lot of kind of taking different bets with the same skill set.
Yeah, and that you mentioned that I didn't know where it will take me. I mean, just letting go of certainty and expecting everything to be known and just I'm going to try it out and see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah, and that sounds like I'm comfortable doing that, by the way. I don't think it was ever comfortable. I'm very type A, strategy and ops. We don't just fly by the seat of our pants. A lot of folks with my background are like, we have project plans for everything, and I'm no different. So when I start feeling out of my depth or like the sky is falling, which is at every single transition, I frankly lock myself in my office and I just build project plans, which is imprinting certainty on top of uncertainty. And it's all false, right? This is like false certainty that I'm creating for myself, but it gives me the confidence and the comfort to just proceed into this unknown. And I still do. I still move forward. I still do the thing, but at least now I have 4 or 5 different versions of what could happen. I've written it down, I've satisfied the itch, and then I just keep going. So we all have, I think, our different hacks for dealing with ambiguity.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, I'm not. I just go with the flow a lot of times, but I actually had just a client call today that and this person wants to make a big change, not just in their career but also where they live and everything, and there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's very very difficult for my client to kind of overcome that uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a mentor tell me once. So I was in a job rotation program. It was a leadership development program where they move you around the world for 2 years, 6-month job rotation. So your job is changing, your location is changing. You've never experienced any of these things, by the way. You're meant to go far outside of everything you've ever done. And it was a career changing moment for me, that program. But when I was in it, I had a mentor tell me, listen, if you're going to change your job at the same time as your location, keep something else the same. Like, don't also try to change your diet or
Mhm.
your partner or your wardrobe, or, keep something stable on the personal side that you can hold on to while everything else changes. Or if you're changing, your personal, core, which, we do, right? We become mothers, we get married. Like, there's things that change and evolve about us, right? then, don't also move and change your job at the same time. Like maybe try to keep one of those stable. And I'll never forget that because I've been through those moments where multiple things were shifting at once. And I did not have that, frankly, that feeling of like where I was just completely disoriented. But I was able to like, maybe find my favorite cafe or, keep the things that I like stable
Yeah.
enough. My husband was with me. These things mattered as well.
Yeah, that's a
So,
great advice. Definitely. And you mentioned motherhood, and I wanted to talk about a little bit about that because I know that you told me in our pre-call that at certain points in your career you had a huge workload, and combining that with motherhood was really taking a toll on you.
yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, I was telling a new mom the other day that I think honestly that it takes about 2 years to transition fully into each new child. You have a new child and you go through this difficult transition, right? Of just adjusting both, yourself as a mother and your relationship and your home rhythms and your work life. I mean, this is a 2-year transition no matter what the child is like. And so the transition into motherhood was one version of that. I mean, I think that was the most radical, but I was in the confines of a beautiful, like very supportive corporate environment. And
Mm-hmm.
that helped a lot. And then the second baby, same, and I already kind of knew, this whole thing, how to deal with no sleep and nursing. I had figured those things out already. So that second one, here he is. The third child, our last baby, our daughter, I was in a very senior role at a very dynamic startup. And, they were going through hyper growth. And, the demands of the role were such that, being pregnant at that time, I like physically, mentally, emotionally was in a place where I was sacrificing a lot to just meet the demands of the role. And frankly, those were the demands. It was fair. That was what the company needed at the time. And so I did have to reassess, given the needs of where this business is, am I able to provide this? Am I the person that should be assuming this seat at the time? I was a few months from giving birth. I had 2 young children at home.
Mm-hmm.
Company was out of the country. And so, that was the calculus. And frankly, the pull for me at the time was not, I want to lean out and refocus my career. It was, I want to find a way to, you know, contribute all the skills and expertise that I've built, and I don't want to slow those down. I want to keep building those and I want to keep contributing, but I want to now do it on my terms. And that's why I started my own business at that time. It was not this is too much. I'd like to now, pick up some hobbies. I actually was still very driven and I continue to be very focused on building the business, but I needed the model to change in order for that to be effective.
For sure. And I can share I have 4 children myself. And I guess one message I want to give to the listeners, I mean, you can do both. I don't want any woman to feel like she need to compromise her career or choose between career and family. You can do both. But as you said, I mean, I think you mentioned something really, really important. You have to find the right kind of balance and the right setup that works for you.
That's right.
And for
That's right.
me, for example, what worked was remote work. So I worked
Hmm.
throughout my career always in office. And one of the jobs, the last job I had before I went remote was in office, and I had to commute every day, like 50 miles each direction.
Oh my
And
gosh.
that was a huge toll on me. That was a huge toll.
Yes.
While having 4 very young children at home, after 2.5 years, I figured out I cannot do that anymore. It's like too
I have,
much. And I have a very kind of environment, which I understood that's the environment. I didn't have any complaints about it, but it's like it wasn't for me. It wasn't what I needed.
I can't even believe you did that. Honestly, like it's everything that in the world to just get the kids out of the house in the morning and then, to get some clothes on your body, let alone get in the car and drive that distance, I can't even believe that. It gets but it's so easy when you're in that too. I can imagine going, is there another way? Like this is what you become accustomed to just pushing through. And
Yeah.
it's hard to envision another path and then to make that so in that moment. Was it for you?
Yeah, I think that the problem was at that time that there was remote work, but not so much remote leadership. So I was in a
Yes.
leadership position, in a senior leadership role.
Yes.
And I mean, it was very common to have engineers or individual contributors working like from different places, but managers less so. But obviously now everything is changed since COVID. I mean, I think all the assumptions kind of changed, and it is possible. In 2016, actually, I started managing remote, and I found a whole new world. And I realized, wow, this is it. Like, this is
Yeah.
what I want. I just want to stay home.
I'm the same way. I can't even
Yeah,
imagine going into an office. Like once we put the flag down, and it was the same exact year, 2016 was when I started working remotely, and it felt taboo at the time as well. And then, of course, COVID accelerated the norms. But now I look back and I go, there's no other way. Like this is it for me. I can't even imagine going anywhere, at least for the next few years, because this is just too compatible, with the needs of my life, and I'm certain yours as well. Like this is just what works right now, and you get a lot
yeah,
done.
for sure. And I think that for me, I mean, at least I don't know about you, Amanda. And it's like one of the things that I really needed was flexibility.
Yes.
That was the number one. Less about how much I work.
Yeah.
I could work a lot. I could work hard, but I needed the flexibility. Those rigidness
Yes.
around like working hours just didn't work for me.
That's right. Yeah. I'm never the person that you have to ask, is she doing the job? Or is she putting enough in? Because I that's like my default. I'll do 200% on everything I do. But I need to be able to your point, when the school calls, I need to be able to go and pick up the kid because the kid is
For
sick.
sure. Yeah,
There's
and
no
be
question.
present. Be
Be
present when
present.
they have different, celebrations, events,
Yeah,
whatever it is.
that's exactly right. Yeah, we made 40 pies yesterday, and then I worked an entire workday. I think it's like things like that pop up, and I do them. It,
Yeah.
it it's exactly what works.
And
So
you know what I even liked more? Not just the flexibility, but the trust and being transparent about it. Like I used to put on my calendar like the blocks when I needed to go to pick up the kids or to
mhm.
whatever school activity, and I just put it out there. Everyone knew what I was doing. And it was okay.
And I'm sure every woman in your organization just appreciated that so much that you decided to do that. Because I
Yeah.
remember the leaders that did that as well, before I knew it was okay, before I had kids even. But I saw that, and that became my example. I said, "Oh, they put dentist appointment on their calendar. I wonder why they did that." And then finally, as I advanced in my career and in my family, and then things started to happen, I understood very clearly why, he or she put dentist appointment on the calendar versus just some blank block and then their child's name. It made perfect sense to me. So this is leadership. This is what it looks like to show people this. We're all humans. We're all full, have complete lives. We don't need to obscure the complexity of our home life or the reality of it just to be effective in this environment. It was
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah. And I think it makes things just, for me at least, it reduced stress because I don't have to make excuses or to explain anything. I just put it out there.
That's right. That's right. And that's that.
Yeah. Wonderful. So, for all the women out there, I mean, know that there are a lot of possibilities and you have to find the
Yes.
setup that works for you.
Yes, you do. And you can.
And you
Yeah.
can, absolutely.
Yeah.
There are so
Yeah.
many more options nowadays, right? When they were 10 years ago or even less than 10.
Yeah. That's exactly right. Yeah. I mean, everything has shifted dramatically, I think, in the right direction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, talk about a little bit, maybe, Amanda, you mentioned that at some point, you had a huge workload and you were pregnant with your third and you decided that didn't work for you anymore. And eventually you decided to transition into consulting. Can you share a little bit how that worked for you?
Yeah. So for me, I was running up against giving birth to our third. And so I was, on the one hand, I had a very clear timeline, which is something I like. I had my goals, I had my timeline, I was ready to pursue this business. And there was no trepidation around, do I want to do this? I knew I wanted to do this. I was committed to the process of really considering what can I provide to multiple companies at once as a service provider. And so I went through a process of deconstructing my prior roles. I thought a lot about what, what uniquely did I provide in those roles to the companies that I was with. When I was at PayPal, what were, there were many initiatives that I led. But, absent the job title, remove that for a moment, what service was I providing? And so, that was a really important exercise for me because I was able to start thinking about my functional expertise and my industry expertise, which I know is something you wanted to discuss, and I'm happy to go into that. But with that in mind, I thought a lot about, let's start to think about the things that felt good in the moment, that felt more natural. And then let me go to my network. Let me start to plant some seeds to the folks that saw me at my best, that were in my warmest network possible, former bosses, former peers that I was in the trenches with, folks that I really have some good respect and trust with. And we just put some lines up, hey, I'm open to projects. And let's start there and see what happens. And with that, with that approach, I was able to line up a couple of projects before my maternity leave that allowed me to kick the tires on, what is this whole thing all about? As Amanda consulting, how does that feel? And I did enough projects to know I liked it. And then I took some time off, and then I came back in the new year, and then I just went all in. And I started really pushing a little bit more on this whole thing.
Perfect. So you mentioned kind of, several things that I would like to touch on. First, I
Sure.
think this is really key. You mentioned forget about the role that you had, like the title. Think about what are the things that you have done? What are the things that you really, helped doing, or what impact have you made? And how that can be applied, right?
Yeah. And there was a lot of I put a premium on the things that I felt, like I said, felt natural in the moment, because I wanted to not enter and exit every day as a self-employed executive, essentially just being drained. I wanted to really orient towards the things that I felt were energy givers. And so, I was a chief of staff 3 times in my career, all at PayPal. And in the moment, those things were pretty grueling, but there were times where I felt like I was really able to rally a team and get them moving in the right direction. And a lot of that was executive team management skills. So I was able to plot a lot of that down on a piece of paper and say, okay, great. I'm pretty good at, playing back a strategy, aligning an executive team, and marshaling a team towards goals. Don't know what that looks like as a service provider, but I know that that belongs on the paper. There was this other category of skills that were much more about helping new COOs ramp up into their role. Having gone through that ramp a number of times myself as the head of operations or COO, I knew some of the pitfalls. I was very passionate about that. That was more of a coaching capacity. And I was
Yeah.
able to plot some of that. And then I did the same thing for my strategy skill set. And, and then I started saying, okay, great. Well, that means I know a lot about fintech. That also means I know a lot about digital assets and crypto. And I started plotting my industry expertise. And none of that was about, I could be your chief of staff, I could be your COO, I could be your head of corporate strategy. I was really pulling things out of those roles and really deciding, could this be provided as an outside service provider? Yes or no? Did this give me energy? Yes or no? And this is an example of, me at my best, yes or no? And then that kind of became my initial menu of things.
Yeah, that makes total sense. And it's also, I know it's very hard to do because we are preconditioned to think about titles.
Yes.
Titles are define, I would say, not maybe the two of us, but they are really defining who we are. And for so many people, it's very hard to detach from the title and say, well, I have been, whatever it is, that's what the title, so that's the only thing I can do, which is
And
totally not true.
it is totally not true. And the titles, so I run a course right now that helps executives and just seasoned operators advance into advisory and consulting. And much of what we do in this course, frankly, is helping them pull the services out of their titles. Because I'll sit across from somebody whose title is program manager, for instance. And I know when I see that title, what I'm getting. I'm getting a ton of strategy and operations. I'm getting a lot of, insightful design and execution. I'm getting, frankly, out of the box consultant in many ways. And I could pull that out of somebody. But if they've had that title for 25 years, which in some companies you can be very senior and still have that title, it's very difficult to say, what have I done that is a strategic capability that could bolt onto a company? And that takes a lot of revision and a lot of testing in the market. But frankly, sometimes it takes coaching because it's hard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that just at least for me, I mean, I do it all the time, by the way. I keep evolving. And what you mentioned at the beginning, like the unknown, I like that.
So cool.
And, I always reflect back, even on the women I'm coaching. And like I'm thinking, okay, where did I really feel I bring myself best?
Yes.
And why? And then I figured, okay, I'm really good at, supporting leaders, at helping managing up, at helping with conflict, with communication, with collaboration. Those are the things I really do very well. So those are the services I actually want to offer. And those are the people I want to serve versus maybe other clients that I felt it was okay, but I was like, maybe I didn't enjoy it as much. And I also didn't feel like I bring as much value.
That is so cool that you were able to get there, right? And say, this is not only my superpower, but the thing that gives me energy and then be able to push into the market. I think that frankly, that's the hardest part. Because once you could tap into that, then it becomes a motion of, being able to authentically discuss that with people who already trust and adore you.
Yeah, and I think that relates kind of to the other thing you mentioned earlier. You mentioned you reach out to your network and you start kind of building up like yourself as a consultant and taking several kind of gigs, right? I mean, you're still working. And I think there's nothing that can replace just rolling out your sleeves and getting yourself out there and experimenting.
Agree. So I think a lot back to those first 2 or 3 contracts because they were very poorly defined, almost by design. And I'm not giving myself credit here. It just, they're startups, their first contracts for me. I had no idea, the full scope of what I'm going to get into here. But my goal is I want to add value. So there was so much iteration in these first few contracts, and I learned so much about, like we've discussed, what I want to do and where's that kind of like effort to impact ratio that I'm looking for. But also, how do I really want to price myself? There was a ton of iteration in that. And I was so grateful to be sitting across the table from people that already, trusted me and had my best interest in mind as well. And were able to tell me like, hey, you're a little low or you're pretty high, Amanda, like bring that price down a little bit, and I there was a lot of goodwill in those first few contracts. And that was frankly the springboard for the entire business because all that iteration produced so much more clarity than if I were just to sit here by myself in this office and imagine a future and build pitch decks. Everything really came out of those first few contracts, to your point.
Absolutely. So I would say to women out there that want to consider that, don't just procrastinate, right? And as you said, build like your website. Like I think the most tempting thing is to start with like, oh, I need a logo, I need a website, I need, a brochure, whatever. I mean, yeah, it's nice to have that, but that's not the most important thing.
No, that is procrastination. That feels like you're building your business, but you're not. You are distracting yourself and you are procrastinating. If you are not actively cultivating your first few contracts, you are distracted and you are procrastinating. And I can say that with 100% certainty because ultimately you will have to rebuild everything that you've built once you've done those first few contracts and you've lived through it and you've refined your messaging and you've refined your offering. Then go ahead and do all of that stuff.
Yeah,
But if you're doing that out the gate,
you keep rebuilding. I mean, one of the things, I would love to hear from you. I really enjoy changing, reinventing things, doing different things, not just staying stagnated, doing, okay, this is the service I provide and I do it again and again and again and again and again. That gets boring.
Oh my
So I
gosh,
feel like I want to
completely.
evolve all the time and do different things. That's part of the
Oh
joy. It's
yeah.
like I can do whatever I want. No one tells me what to do.
That is the singular joy of being on this path because I didn't realize it, but what I was looking for the last 10 years was this freedom to obviously, mold my schedule for all the reasons we've discussed, but to pursue projects, to follow my interests, to collaborate with people. Like this is literally the joy of my life. So this is actually why I started that course I mentioned earlier because frankly, I saw the opportunity to add value. I love coaching. I wanted to do it. And that's why I did it. I didn't have to convince anybody it was a good idea. I didn't have to prepare a plan and present it. I just had to, carve out the time, frankly, and just commit to doing it. And then I did it. And I mean, now I get to decide if I want to keep doing it, which I think the answer is yes. But the fact is that I'm self-directed and I can explore and not get bored ever. I mean, what a
Yeah.
privilege.
Yeah. It's such a privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you do offer this course, I mean, I'll be happy to share it. I mean, I think that's going to be valuable to so many women.
Thank you. I'm pulling the plan together for next year and I'd be delighted to share that with you. I'd love to keep
Perfect.
going.
Perfect. So what's one advice you would give to women who are considering, between staying employed, starting a business, consulting or whatever?
Yeah, I think, the thing that I would look at is consider those first 3 to 5 people in your network. If you're really compelled to be, self-employed and build a portfolio, I think the first sanity check that we all should have with ourselves is who are those first 3 to 5 people that we can send an email to that will get on the call with us and potentially have an opportunity at the other side of that. And it's because they've seen us at our best, they trust us, and they're willing to, put their name on the line to sponsor us into opportunities. If you have 2 or 3 of those even, you're ready. If you feel compelled to want to pursue something like this, give it a shot. I think, the other lane is if you're still going back and forth and you're really wondering, is there more that I can squeeze out of this corporate role? The answer might still be yes as well. There were many times where I was not sure if I was ready to go. And what I did instead of just jumping out into the world was I just kept taking new roles that were providing me with new experiences in supportive environments with good people. And if you have those opportunities ahead of you in your current context, then say yes to those. Because I mean, I would never tell somebody just leave, parachute out, see what happens if they feel like they can still overturn some rocks and find some opportunities in the space that they're in. And it's a personal decision. So I would say that's probably it.
Percent. I mean, this is a message I want to repeat. There is no right or wrong. I mean, it's okay to be employed. It's okay to be an entrepreneur. It's okay to be a consultant. Whatever works for you. I mean, there is no one answer that fits all.
Ever.
Ever.
We're all so different, and our families and our friends and our everybody needs different things from us. So everybody, it's a very personal decision. But just know what's possible. Anything, just keep overturning the rocks. Never stop
Yeah.
because you just never know what's around the corner. So
Yeah. Wow, Amanda, I really enjoyed talking with you. And before we leave, I mean, is there anything else you want to share that I haven't asked you?
if I can be helpful to anybody who's considering advising and investing as well, operating in an external context, you're welcome to find me on LinkedIn. I truly get a ton of energy from, helping especially moms and women, think about what's possible in this new path. So just an offer to your audience. I'm always open to connecting.
Wonderful. And I'll make sure to put your LinkedIn URL in the show notes. Thank you so much, Amanda. It's been such a pleasure.
This was a joy. Thank you so much, Limor.
Thank you so much for listening to the episode with Amanda. Before you go, I want to kind of share with you what's coming up next week. And trust me, you don't want to miss next week's episode. Next week, I'm sitting down with the incredible Kim Burness. And Kim is an expert in influence and leadership. And we are diving into practical strategies for women in tech who struggle with influence. It could be managing up, setting boundaries, asking for promotion without feeling like you are pushy. If you ever felt like you are unheard, or maybe you're struggling to assert yourself into the workplace, this episode is for you. And before you go, make sure to subscribe to my podcast, sign up for my newsletter, and share it with anyone that you feel need to hear this conversation this week. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next week.